We are here with the 8th and the final video of the lion tutorial. So here we are just continuing his chin. I think I had this on the 7th one as well, but we're just adding some specks and continuing to deepen his chin hair a little bit. And then we're going to continue with some more grays over top of the whites. And then we'll just finish his mane, and that will be the end of it. Now we have about an hour and 15 minutes or so on this video, and that'll be it. It'll be a wrap. Okay, now that I'm finishing up with the black, I'm going to grab my warm gray 50 and continue to work with my white, and then I'm going to call it finished on his chin. I kind of like how the back of the paper is showing through, like you can see that, so that adds some depth in his chin. I don't have to do a whole lot with that because I want to keep his chin very white. And then we're going to start working on the rest of his mane. Now a lot of the mane I already have based out with my light umber. We're going to go back over it with some burnt ochre, start giving it some shape and pulling out some individual hairs and chunks. So we're just very lightly blending these areas together a little bit. And this is like a nice, kind of like a reddish brown. So it looks very nice over top of the dark paper, and then it blends well with the light umber that's down for the base. And now get your dark umber and start blending his cheeks out a little bit. I'm just looking at where I'm at. A lot of shapes in here. I just want to make sure that it is anatomically correct, that I'm getting all of his features where they need to be. So I'm using a flicking motion like you would with the hair, like we did earlier on his mane. And we're just adding shapes and getting little dark streaks in here. I'm drawing around his whiskers and just basing out a little bit darker. It's going to be darker fur underneath his chin. We want it to look like it's set back, not quite in the background, but it wants you want to make it look like it's under his chin, and that his chin is sticking out further than what the rest of his mane is. So keep working with your dark umber and get these areas to where you want them to be. And then I'm also using some dark brown too. Just adding little areas where you want them to be like darker, and bring out the lighter areas as well. And we'll do that here in a second. Grab our goldenrod here and start adding a little bit more color. Actually, I'm going to use a little bit of this yellow ochre first, and we're going to go in and just add a few highlights. It looks really nice with this brown. And you're just pulling out some individual hairs, giving it some shape, giving his mane a little bit more of a fluffy look. And it's starting to take shape now. I like these wispies over here that are over just hanging out in the black. Like, you can tell that they're there, but there's a lot of space in between, so with the black showing through, I think it looks great. Add a little bit here. Just keep blending out some of these areas. And the black is what really makes it pop out, like all these individual hairs. When you start adding the black, you start to get really nice shapes within the hair and different layers and levels. And just keep working with it. Be careful, you want to preserve your whiskers. Still working with the black. I'm just working through here, making sure it's dark enough. You're really starting to see a lot of the hair and the chunks and how it's coming together. Definitely be careful around your whiskers. Now adding some light umber here to be very careful about the whiskers, and just adding a little bit more of a darker color in his lips. And basing, starting to base out some more area. We're going to come through and start working on it just like we did up above. So keep in mind the direction of your hair. I'm kind of going up and down with the direction of the hair. I'm not worried too much as like a start and stop point, but I want to keep it, you know, the strokes in the same direction as the hair is going. So we're just basing this out in the light umber again like we did above. We're just, you know, starting over. Quite a big chunk here that we just finished up with basing, and we're going to go back through, grab our dark umber, and start back on the other side. Now this tutorial is a little bit different because most of it we're just working on the mane, so a lot of it is going to be a repeat, you know, of everything that we've done with the layers and the colors. And just keep an eye on, you know, your values and where you're putting the values at. So it's going to be a lot darker underneath his chin and around his cheeks, and we're just going to continue to do this. We're going to just walk through it. Making some progress here. Still adding more with the dark umber. It is, you can see it's eating my pencil pretty fast. So I want to keep it sharp. And it's really pulling out a lot of those shapes that I want inside of the hair. Now, I'm not too worried about the picture at this point. I kind of like the feeling of some freedom here because it is just long fur. So I'm just sort of making up some of the strokes. Now, a lot of it, I will find like a chunk, like a main chunk that needs to be there, and I'll make sure that I get that. But some of these other areas, I'm just sort of filling in the blanks. Okay, so now that we have our dark umber over top of our light umber, now this is when it starts to get a little bit more tedious because you don't want to go over top of your whiskers. You want to keep those, like preserve them. And we're just going to go through and deepen the hues and the values around the whiskers and start to really make these chunks and bits of hair pop out and darken under his chin. So grab your black and let's start to pull out some of these individual chunks, individual hairs, and put some value. It's a lot darker in this area. We want to make sure that we get it that way because we want it to look like it's set back, that his face is protruding forward, and that the mane is underneath and behind. And still working. This area is a bit darker. Again, just taking our time, pulling out some of these hairs. And we'll go back through and add some more color. but we are in the home stretch here. It is quite a bit darker under the chin. If you notice that I didn't put any brown or any, light umber, dark umber underneath his chin. I wanted it to be a darker black. So I left it blank, or at least with the paper shining through. And this technique here, I'm kind of flicking up into his hair, up into his chin hair. I don't know what they call that, honestly. It's just something that, I like to do. I feel like it adds to the hair because it's overlapping. So I want to show that there's hair behind it that's darker. So a lot of times I can also get like some really nice sharp and thin lines from, the hair that's overlapping by using that backwards almost drawing. It's like you're drawing up into the lighter area and making it look like it's shining from behind, or at least it's, viewing from behind, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me. But just continue to work on this mane and take your time. Don't rush. Still working with the black and still kind of doing that backwards, you know, drawing up into his fur of his chin, and then also flicking downward into the mane that is below him on his chest. It's really starting to come together. I'm just darkening this area here, and then we will start to move on. I'm going to start working down too in the black area that we put the pan pastels on. I want to kind of blend the black into the fur a little bit more, so we will work that way. It'll be kind of like we did in the chin here with doing the backwards coloring. So we'll do that with the black background as well into the fur. So be mindful too, you want to make sure that you get some chunks like sticking out. You don't want it to just look like a bunch of streaky hair too. So just keep watching your progress, and keep looking at your reference photo if you want to add more chunks or however you want to do it. Now, I personally like the freedom, like I said before, the freedom of just sort of making it up just with certain subjects. Now, if it's like a dog or I'm doing a commission, it depends on the fur. Like if the fur is real fuzzy and crazy, kind of like this mane, I just did a Pomeranian, and its hair was just wild and fuzzy. So it was really fun to do because I had a lot of play area, I guess I would say. A lot of, movement. I could just kind of move around freely and just sort of get the main chunks and then kind of fill in the gaps in between. So, I mean, some people might not like that. They might like a more rigid, like this is how it has to be. But personally, I enjoy that freedom to just allow my mind to flow and add a lot of the stuff myself. So if you're looking at your picture, there are some deeper spots. So I'm going to add some of those areas and make these chunks kind of pop out a little bit better. And then we'll work our way up. Again, it's pretty dark over here in the corner of his mouth. We want to make sure that we show that it's setting back behind his mouth. We don't want to leave it a flat color. So keep working on this area. Keep adding your chunks of hair and your value. Start adding some of the dark umber on this side here. And we based out with the light umber, so the dark umber looks pretty nice up against it. And back with your black, start making these little areas pop out with more depth and creating your little chunks of hair. And I'm kind of creating these, if you think about it, they're almost like little V's. So if you see the upside down V's, so I'm making like a V, and then I'm continuing to, push that V downward so that it creates that feel of like a chunk of hair. So this I'm darkening up quite a bit. I'm not using a whole lot of pressure, just a lot of layering right here. I want it to look as natural as possible, but at the same time I want it to look like it's fur that's sort of crazy layering on top of each other. And now I'm getting excited. You see how nice that looks? That just looks great. I really, really like the contrast of this black. So it's just coming along very nicely. I love how it's real deep and dark in there. And now I want to get all this blended down into the mane. And continue to pull out these areas. What's really nice about doing it this way is that, you can make up, like I said before, I enjoy that type of artistic flow. Sometimes it's just nice to let your brain draw rather than, really sticking to that rigid. Because hair is one of them, I think, is just one of the most fun things to draw, especially when it's just crazy. I've had a few crazy haired animals that I've done, and it's just a lot of fun to do. Adding all these values in here, you're really starting to see the mane pop out. It's really looking good. I'm really pleased with this. And I hope yours is turning out the same. So now I want to come back through and put my midtones in. This is the burnt ochre. So start adding in these little pieces. You're pulling out individual hairs. I'm not coloring over top of everything that I just did. Now, you just want to go through and add bits and pieces where you see fit. Of course, it's like a reddish, brownish kind of tone. So go back over some areas, make it look like the mane above, and continue to just add it. And we'll go all the way around under the chin and up to where we stopped. And we're really just adding a little bit of color and not a lot of pressure, just enough to give it a little tint of this reddish brown. We don't want to go overboard. Now, of course, if you want a more reddish look, you can use this, or if you wanted to use I think it's Tuscan red, yeah. If you wanted to use a red like that, that would probably look pretty nice with all the browns and the ochres here. So I want to tone down the chin just a little bit more. So I'm going in with my cool gray 20% and starting to just add a little bit more value in here on his chin. And just toning down some of these hairs. And then I'm going to come back through and highlight a few. Because if you look at it, some of them are sticking out and they're brighter, and then some of them are kind of sticking back in and they're a little bit darker. So we're just going to add that, and then I'm going to come back through and add a few more highlights in between just to give it more of a layered look. And plus we did all that dark work underneath, so it'll look nice to have some sharper lines. Now, again, on Bristol, if you have like Bristol paper or a different type of paper that isn't pastel matte, you have to be careful because the white or the lighter colors with the black, they pick up that black, and then when you put your pencil back down on a lighter color, you get like a black spot, like a polka dot. And you just want to watch that. Now, since this is the pastel matte, it doesn't do that. At least that I could tell. And if it does, it's very, very minor. But yeah, if you have a smooth paper or, you know, one that just doesn't have like a tooth on it like this does, you're going to get it to, you know, bleed into the other areas. Now, one way that I have found to combat that is if you're drawing on Bristol Smooth and you draw from the light to the dark and it picks up the dark, before you put your pencil back on the paper, you take your pencil, your lighter pencil, and you wipe it off. And a lot of times I'll use just like my pants or my sleeve, because I mean the pencil comes out. It's not that big of a deal, especially with the Prismacolor, and it seems to wipe off fairly easily. This is the Polychromos, and I'm just touching up his whiskers a little bit more, and then now I'm adding with the light peach just a few highlights. I'm just pulling out some of these individual hairs, not a lot of pressure. We're just very lightly adding a few stray hairs just to give it a really nice feel. I add a little bit of light peach in the chin there. And then just little wispies here and there. We just want it to look very wild. I mean, he is the king of the jungle, which I guess I never really understood that. Shouldn't a lion be king of the desert? I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud. My brain goes off in different tangents, but I'm sure a lot of people do that as well. Anyway, let's continue to do wispies and add these little individual hairs. The mane is looking spectacular. I really, really am liking this. And I just want it to look as realistic as possible. We are on the final stretch of his mane. So let's base it out again with our light umber, still keeping in the direction of the fur. Again, I'm going back and forth like an up and down motion, but it doesn't matter too much if I start and stop at the same spot. This is just the base. So I find too, when you go back and forth, you kind of create these natural like strokes of where there would be like a V, like an upside down V, to where you can put, you know, your big chunks of hair, and it seems more natural to me rather than purposely putting it there. And still just base this out, and we will start adding our other layers on top. Before I move on, I want to come back through here and add a little more touches on his chin. I just think he needs a little bit more color in there. I love the spotted look that's going on his lower lip here in his chin area. Getting some black, drawing in between some of these hairs just to give it some depth, like you can see the dark skin that's underneath this hair. Back with your dark umber, start mapping out the rest of this mane. Make your chunks. Make sure you stay in the direction of the hair. You don't want to go horizontal if the hair is going vertical, and vice versa. You just want to keep a close eye on it. Of course, if you're getting tunnel vision again, you know, if you're like me, take a break, step back. You don't want to rush this last part. That's what I struggle with. I get close to being done and I just start to want to rush. So and back with your black pencil. Now, I did end up putting my black pencil on an extender. Now, if you don't have an extender, that's okay. If you like to draw with a shorter pencil, that's fine too. I will say, though, that this extender has really helped me get more life out of my pencils. I was pitching my pencils because I wasn't able to hold on to them. So if you don't have a pencil extender, I would recommend that you purchase one. Now this was I think this is a General's pencil extender. General's is pretty good. Now I know that when I use it for a long time, the metal, like the ribs on these metal pieces, sometimes bother my fingers. It sometimes makes them really sore. But they have different kinds out there. This one isn't necessarily a bad one at all. It's pretty good. I like it. But I only have one, and I only use it once in a while when I need it, and then I switch out different pencils if they get short. So a lot of people will get multiple extenders, which is probably more ideal so that you don't have to keep switching out the pencil tip. You know, you just put them all in extenders and then you use them as is. So, I mean, it'd probably save on time, but I mean, who's looking at the time when you're doing art, right? Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But yeah, we're just adding more and more values here in the fur, and just keep working and making these chunks, and then we'll start adding the whiskers, and we're getting so close to being finished. And we're just going to keep working with the black, adding these values. It's really coming along nicely. I'm definitely enjoying this. And I'm darkening up this area. I'm kind of blending it with that background. I want the hair to stick out and be wild, but I also want the background to fade into it as well. So, and then I want this top part to look like it's, you know, the same value as below. And of course my light is shining real goofy, so it doesn't look like the same value, but I assure you it's the shine on the top that's making it look a little bit washed out. And this is the burnt ochre, and I'm just adding it like I did below, just giving little streaks of color, some flicking motion. And come in with the yellow ochre. And add some highlights as well. And this really makes it pop too. When you have like such a contrast of the dark with some of the light, it just looks so awesome. So sorry I kind of went off camera there for a minute. Just quickly added a few more over on the other side. Again, sometimes I don't even pay attention to how I'm videotaping. I just start to draw and then I don't realize that I'm going off screen. Just adding little fine details of these highlights. And I might, let's see. Now we're just going to keep adding some of these. And now we're sort of at the point where we're fine-tuning some things before we finish it up. So I'm darkening up these areas. I want to make sure that, you know, they are the value that I want them at. And I'm retouching up his whiskers on his left side. And extending them just a little bit. Again, this is the Polychromos pencil. If you do not have it, that is okay. I actually am going back in with my Prismacolor to brighten it up. It seems like the Prismacolor is a little bit brighter than the Polychromos. And then darkening up this little crazy single black whisker. Oh, my chickens are running amok. I hope you can't hear them, but they know I'm recording, so they're out there causing crazy chaos. Okay, he has some black whiskers here, so just pull them out a little bit. We're going to start tweaking this area, getting it finished up, and then we're going to go to the other side and start drawing the whiskers as well. Of course, if you see any areas that you are concerned with, feel free to go back through and touch up as you see fit. This is just what I'm seeing on my end of what I want for my piece. So here's that crazy wonky whisker, couple of them. Okay, and then let's start with the white, and we're going to start to add in the other whiskers. Now, the whiskers, I think, are important to look for the placement. Obviously, you want them to look realistic. You don't just want them straight out and guess where they would be. I mean, you want it to look like the picture and like the type of animal. If you just have them straight out, it's not going to look like the picture. But they do. They curl. They kind of curl down. So you want to make sure that you get that correct. This is the Polychromos pencil again. Again, if you don't have it, it's not a big deal. Use your white pencil for the Prismacolor. It works just as good. So slowly mapping these whiskers out. Some of them are going up, some of them are kind of crazy. You have sometimes two of them are coming from one spot, and we're just adding them here and there, making sure that we get them in there. We're going to continue to darken them up. Now that I have them all mapped out, I'm going to go back through and use a little bit more pressure to make sure that I get them bright enough. So I guess I didn't realize this until just now, but on the left I used a different method where I drew the whiskers first and then I colored around them. And then on this one I drew the underneath first and then I colored over it. So either way works. Neither way is wrong. You might prefer, one over the other. Obviously, I don't think it really matters. They're whiskers. We're drawing whiskers and they'll turn out just as lovely on both sides. So, as an artist, sometimes you just get lost in your work and you forget, what method you're using or teaching, and you just kind of start going with the flow. So, and that is apparently what I have done here. But as you can see, both sides, I'm kind of drawing around them now again just to sharpen them up. But two different methods, both work just as good with each other. But if you are on, again, like a Bristol Smooth or a Strathmore paper, you may want to go with the first method that we used of drawing them first and then coloring them around them, because you get a brighter look. Whereas on this side with the smooth, you may not be able to draw over top of it. It might just smear and make lighter browns rather than a nice bright white. And pretty soon here we're going to come to a close. It's getting really close to the end. We are almost complete. So I just want to make sure that my whiskers are how I want them to be, and you don't want to get them too thick, so keep your pencil sharp and make sure that you don't go overboard with it. Now I hope you've enjoyed this. I have enjoyed this thoroughly. I really, really enjoy teaching. I enjoy you watching. I appreciate you watching. I'd love it if you could let me know if you did go through the whole tutorial, that you could share with me what you created. And also, if you'd like to leave some feedback, that would also be great. Again, if you didn't know, I have a Patreon page that you can come and get instruction every week. You can also be included on my Facebook Patreon page, which is a little bit more doable with one-on-one instruction. So, of course, if you see any areas that you need to touch up, go for it. Definitely share with me what you've created, and I hope to see you on the next one. You have a great day.